All right. Good morning, everybody. We are at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Cameron, if you don't mind the next slide, please. Great. So thank you to all of you for joining us for our final installment of our webinar series for economic developers. Today's topic is assistance for agriculture producers. My name is Sarah Marquardt. I'm an emergency management specialist at USDA Rural Development, and I'm going to be facilitating today's webinar. Right now, I'm currently supporting disaster recovery efforts in California associated with the two presidentially declared disasters from end of last year, earlier this year. Those would be DR 4683 and DR 4699, and I'm serving as the USDA advisor in both of those events. So as you can see from what we have posted on the screen here, this is the agenda for today. I'm very pleased to be joined with several of my USDA colleagues from the Risk Management Agency as well as Farm Service Agency, and we're also pleased to have University of California Ag and Natural Resources. Before we get started, I just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. First of all, I want everybody to know that today's webinar is going to be recorded. We are going to be posting in the chat a digital sign-in document, and I ask that all of you take a moment to sign in and complete that. Lastly, we're anticipating having time to take questions at the end of this webinar. We're asking that all the participants enter their questions directly into the chat, and we will go ahead and respond to those at the end. So with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. We'd like to start with Jeff Yasui, our Regional Director for the USDA Risk Management Agency. Jeff, I'll turn it to you. And Cameron, if we can get to the next slide. Thank you. Go ahead, Jeff. Oh, Jeff, you're on mute.
I was saying all good things about you, Sarah.
I'm sure. All right, you can repeat those now.
I will. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Yasui. I'm with the Risk Management Agency at the USDA. My office is in Davis, California. We oversee crop insurance in 5 states, California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and Hawaii. And just going to give you a brief overview of crop insurance from a somewhat a high altitude here. So next slide, please. So what does the RMA do? Well, we oversee crop insurance. That's our main function, but we also have grants and cooperative agreements that we do provide. A lot of these are for outreach and education, but we also do some for research and development. And for example, in California, I believe we will have 2 of them this upcoming year for outreach and education. And we did do one with the UC Davis for research and development earlier this year or last year, and that was in regards to, last year in regards to great cost studies. Next slide. Okay, so crop insurance, isn't this just like any other insurance? Well, there are some features that are the same. Obviously, crop insurance must be purchased prior to damage or losses or the coverage periods. Crop insurance costs money. There are premiums involved. Insurance companies are at risk for underwriting gains and losses, and agents do get compensated through commissions from the companies. Now, on the next slide, you will see things that are different. So, I guess next slide. Thank you. Did not cue you up very well on that one. Some major differences with crop insurance. Policies and features can't change for different agents and different companies. You know, so for example, how you can shop around for different rates or features with your auto, your home insurance based on who you sign up with. Crop insurance is different. The agents and the companies are competing solely on service. The features, the costs, everything else is the same. We don't allow for rebates or special discounts. So an agent or a company can't say, here, you get Super Bowl tickets if you sign up with us. And that has happened, and they got in trouble for that. Our premiums are highly subsidized. On average, 62% of the premium is paid for by the USDA. So growers are only responsible for about 1/3 of the premium. The agents, they are actually different from the from your property and casualty policies, because agents are independent and they can write for multiple companies. They're not attached. The other thing we have is is everything the same? Why are all the costs the same? It's because those are all established by RMA. We do all the premium rates. We write all the regulations, the rules, the yield, and calculate the yield and price data that's needed for an insurance policy. We also provide a lot of compliance for our policy to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. Next slide. This is kind of the structure of how RMA sells crop, or how we don't sell crop, but how crop insurance is sold. We're kind of at the top of that government-like building. We have standard reinsurance agreements with companies. In California, we have 10 different crop insurance companies that are nationwide, but only 10 of them do have policies in California. These companies, they have contracts with about 400 agents out there. And like I said, an agent could be contracted with multiple companies. And it's the agents that sell the policies to the ag producers. Statistically, we have 15,000 different ag producers, or ag policies actually, and we cover right now 61 different crops, livestock, milk, and we also have full farm coverage, which means that we will cover the revenue of all the commodities on your farm, even if it's not one of the 61 crops or the eligible livestock products that we have. So what whole farm does, it in essence ensures or guarantees that your farm is going to get a certain amount of revenue in the year you sign up. Next slide. Each policy is different. We don't have a standard policy. We don't have one policy that fits every crop. Every crop has its own language, its own special provisions, its own features. Most policies will either provide coverage for yield, revenue, or it will provide area coverage. And sometimes there's also combination policies that cover all three. Area coverage is a little bit more unique. It's not used that much in California, but for example, if there is widespread conditions, we'll cover under that regardless of if the grower has individual losses. Some policies also have preventive planting and replanting provisions. So if they're unable to plant, we'll provide an indemnity. If their planting gets destroyed, we'll help with the replant cost. A lot of policies have their own options and endorsements. Basically, these policies are very flexible. You can pick different coverage levels, different price selections. You can pick which options and endorsements you want. Some of them add premium, some of them deduct premium, but in essence, it makes it affordable. We also have what we call catastrophic coverage, and that's a very cheap form of crop insurance. It's a fee of about $500 and some odd. I should know that, but it's a little bit over $500. Actually, maybe over $600 now. And you're paying for all of the acreage on the farm at 50% coverage level, and it doesn't change from that dollar amount. For all the other policies, it will depend upon all the options and elections that you make. Next slide. The other benefit with crop insurance is that it doesn't take legislation. This program is in place. It's funded. There's nothing special that needs to be done. We offer it at the beginning of the year. If the grower is interested, they need to get it, obtain the policy by the sales closing dates. There are no exceptions. They have to have it by that time. These programs, the crop insurance program is not dependent on emergency or disaster declarations. We look at individual losses. The area-wide plans, they look at different criteria, but they're not based on the emergency or disaster declarations. And one key thing about crop insurance policies, which will lead to the next presenter, is that if a grower has a crop insurance policy or receives an indemnity, it can actually expedite the payment for that other program, or it may increase the benefits for the USDA programs. A lot of USDA Farm Service Agency disaster programs have been somewhat designed to reward growers who have crop insurance. It's to also then encourage growers to get crop insurance into the future. Expediting payments, what that means is that under the last disaster program that Navdeep's going to talk about, is that there was an earlier phase of the program. The first phase of the program actually went out to growers who received a crop insurance payment. And it was just a simple calculation from that, and growers signed an application form. Next slide. This is just some statistics to show what we paid. We haven't paid that much yet to date, $31 million for 2023, and that it does include the Tulare Lake Basin losses. There have been $23 million in prevented planted for ELS cotton. That was all in the basin, I'm assuming, in the Tulare Lake area. But as you can see by the statistical data, we did have big years in the past. 227 million went out for in 2019. Also, just another stat that isn't on the slide is that the most we've ever paid for crop insurance indemnities in California was in excess of $450 million, and that was for drought that occurred last year. So we went from a very bad drought year, and a lot of that was prevent planted, to rice and ELS cotton of about $450 million, and now we're in the opposite condition, excessive moisture. That $31 million will increase substantially. Next slide. So what we are looking at for 2023 is Tulare Lake, which I had mentioned. Most of that will be the prevented planting. There are some planted losses that will be involved there. Tree crops, Amazon pistachios, they're pretty well covered with crop insurance. Alfalfa is going to have some losses, but the problem with alfalfa is most growers did not take alfalfa coverage. In most years, it's very difficult for them to collect an indemnity or for it to pay off because alfalfa has so many cuttings, they usually don't have an overall loss. The agency is looking at that, but there won't be changes that would affect the 2023 issues. Other areas that we're expecting losses, prevent planted for rice, that was due to excessive moisture in the Northern California area. Strawberries, there were losses, but like alfalfa, very few policies. A lot of the strawberry growers stayed in the NAP program for FSA, the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, and they can get that for strawberries in lieu of crop insurance. So maybe, hopefully, many of those growers that were affected by strawberries had NAP policies. And along the Salinas River, that area where those levee breaks were, a lot of those crops were not insured in those areas. We don't insure, for example, lettuce crops. A lot of the fresh vegetable crops are not covered by crop insurance. We do cover most of the tree crops that are out there, grain crops, row crops, but a lot of the fresh vegetable crops are not generally covered unless they have a whole farm plan. Next slide. Okay, that's it. But this is the contact material that we have. We have a website, rma.usda.gov. There's a lot of different tools on there. Growers can find agent locator lists. There are a lot of statistical reports, a lot of fact sheets, just a lot of information on that. I'm at the Davis Regional Office. You can get a hold of me at the rsoca@usda.gov, which goes out to our office mailbox. But I also put down my own email address at the bottom, jeff.yasui@usda.gov, if you want to get a hold of me directly. Either way, I'm sure the message will get to me. So those are the contact numbers. The phone, if you dial the phone, you're most likely going to get a voice message request to leave a voice message, but we will get back on that too. That's it.
Right. Well, thank you, Jeff. We appreciate that. This is a really important tool when we're talking about resiliency, disaster resiliency. And one of the biggest components to that for our producers is the programs you were just talking about, having that prepared piece. So thank you for that information and for your time today. Next, we are going to turn to the Farm Service Agency at USDA. Our first presenter from the agency is Navdeep Dillon. She's the Farm Program Chief in California. Nav, I'm going to turn it to you.
All right. Good morning. Thanks, Jeff. And so I'm just going to follow through on what Jeff had just mentioned. So I'm going to discuss disaster programs. Agency, FSA does have other traditional programs that we administer, but in the most recent, a lot of questions and inquiries have come around disaster assistance and disaster assistance specifically related to the most recent flooding. So that's what we're going to focus on. And then John Oosterman, who is the Farm Loan Chief, is going to discuss our loan programs. So you may see some repetition in some of the slides between John and I, but I think there's good information in both presentations. Next slide. Okay, so the one program that's utilized most, has been utilized most, I guess, is our emergency conservation program. And we do have this program currently active for the most recent flooding. The sign-up deadline, the sign-up dates for the program are started on February 13th. Normally, we only hold a 60 to 90-day sign-up, but due to the unusual circumstances, and we were anticipating additional flooding once the snow melt started, and continued flooding for some of the areas in the Tulare Lake area, that we extended the sign up through October 13th, 2023, to make sure that any producers who, as the water receded, that they're able to come in and apply for this program. So what does emergency conservation program, what does it do? It doesn't, this is a cost share program. It does not cost the producer anything to apply for this program. It is the program designed to rehabilitate the land and bring it back to pre-disaster condition, right? So this program is it's requested by the local county committee, and it's approved through the state office and the national office for it to be implemented. What do we offer under this program? We do debris removal. So any debris that's deposited on your cropland, your grazing land, the farmland, we assist in removing that debris. We also offer land leveling. So any land that was irrigated land that was, destroyed with the flooding, or you had gullies, or there was, there was the soil was moved and was deposited in one side of the field, will help you re-level that land. Repair and replace fencing. This is a highly utilized portion of the program, specifically related to livestock. So livestock fences, we do under fence replacements, fence repairs for including or excluding animals. We also do conservation structures. What is conservation structures? That's basically any practice that you have in place for conservation purposes. We do irrigation systems. For microjet systems, anything like that's damaged because of the disaster condition. This program is available not just for flooding, but any disaster that occurs. It could be wildfires or anything like that. So we either repair the structure or we replace it, depending on what we determine based on our initial assessments. So this is the cost share program. We offer 75% of the agency established rates for producers. We cost share up to that percent. And if you're a socially disadvantaged or limited resource, a beginning farmer rancher, then we do cost share up to 90%. You can get a 25% advance payment for our practices if you need advance payment to get the project started. Next slide. It's good. Again, this program does require that we do an on-site inspection. However, for the flooding, we did waive that because there were so many requests at the agency. Did not have the staff to go out and do on-site inspections, so those were waived. However, we do still want to work with the producer, have them contact us so we can provide the assistance that's needed. We do. You do have to have a commercial operation. It can't be it can't be a ag operation which is used for your own use or it's a hobby. And so this program does require an environmental review prior to the practice being started. Next slide. So emergency assistance for livestock honeybees and farm raised fish. This program is a catch-all program. So anything that we don't cover under our other disaster programs, the agency tries to pick up under this ELAP program. Specifically for livestock, we do provide assistance for any stored feed that's damaged or flooded because of the disaster event, or if you lose access to your grazing land. It does cover. We do provide the maximum benefits that we provide is up to 150 days. And then you do have to file a notice of loss within 30 days of the disaster, of the loss becoming apparent to you. Again, you have to have a commercial operation, and in this case, your adjusted gross income for that year cannot exceed $900,000. When we look, say, adjusted gross income, we're looking at the year that you apply for benefits. We're not looking at that specific year, but we're looking at 3 years. 3 years before that. So if you're applying for benefits for 2023, we're going to look at your just average AGI for 21, 20, and 19, and we're going to average that to see if that's under the 900,000. Next slide. So the ELAP program also has a honeybee component to it. So this is it's available to any producer who is in a commercial business of either honey production, pollination, or honeybee breeding. It does cover both colony, hive, and feed losses for honey, for bee losses and hive losses. There is a normal mortality. You have to have loss in excess of 22%. You are required to file a notice of loss within 15 days of when the loss becomes apparent. And this program, again, this component of ELAP does continue to have the 900,000 AGI limitation. Next slide. The livestock indemnity program provides benefits to livestock producers for any livestock that die as a result of the disaster event, or are injured and you have to sell them for a reduced price due to that injury. You do have to have the loss in livestock death has to exceed normal mortality, and we have normal mortality established based on the weight, the size, and the type of the animal. And again, so the payment rates differ based on the type and the weight range of the animal. You do have to file a notice of loss within 30 days of when the loss becomes apparent, and the proof of death or injury is required. Commercial operation, again, is a requirement of all of our programs, and this program also has a AGI limitation that you cannot exceed. Next slide. The tree assistance program assists in establishing vines or trees. I should have trees as well in there listed that were destroyed or damaged because of flooding or any other disaster event. The loss has to exceed normal mortality. For almost all of our trees, our normal mortality is set at 18%. This is a cost share program. We pay a per vine or per tree rate, and there is an option to request land preparation request a practice to land prep, and that is paid by acre. And the deadline to apply for this program is within 90 days of when the loss becomes apparent to you. Excuse me. We do, there is an environmental review that has to be completed before a practice is started. And you cannot start the practice until we approve the application. We do have loss adjusters who come out and do a loss assessment of the field or the stand that's requested, where tap assistance is requested. And this program does have an AGI limitation of 900,000, and we do have a limitation of the maximum that we will pay in terms of acres for in a year is 1,000 acres. Next slide. The NAP program, which is Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, is an offshoot of the Risk Management Agency's crop insurance. So this program is available for any crop where crop insurance is not available through FCIC. So as Jeff said, for crops like in the Salinas Valley, we do offer crop insurance for all the vegetable crops, strawberries, lettuce, any of those crops where crop insurance isn't available. We do offer this NAP program. It is a yield. The losses are paid based on if there's a loss in yield, or the crop is prevented from being planted. You do have to purchase the crop insurance, this insurance, similar to crop insurance, prior to the application closing dates, and we do have those dates for our state established already. The coverage level that a producer can buy is up to 65% of the yield and 100% of the price. However, for grazed crops, we only offer coverage up to 50% and 55% of the price. There is a reduction in premium. So if a producer is also a disadvantaged or a limited resource producer, we do reduce the premium by 50%, and we waive the administrative fee for the minimum coverage, which is 55. Again, this NAP program is not available if your adjusted gross income is above 900,000. Next slide. Okay, for more information on FSA programs, you can visit www.fsa.usda.gov, or you can go to farmers.gov, and that has all the programs listed. And I think I'm going to turn it back to Sarah.
Thank you, Navdeep. Really appreciate all that helpful information. I think that is just a really great overview of the breadth of resources that FSA has, that programs do not require necessarily that disaster declaration. So for those of you, when you're involved with producers in your communities, for events that don't have those major disaster declarations, please know that FSA has a whole bevy of resources available to producers, as Navdeep just shared. Now we're going to turn over to John Osterman, our Farm Loan Chief at Farm Service Agency, and he is going to discuss some additional farm loan programs. Over to you, John.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much, and appreciate the introduction. Again, my name is John Osterman. I'm the Farm Loan Chief with the Farm Service Agency, and based out of Davis, California, like Navdeep and Jeff. The Farm Service Agency provides its farm loan programs. We provide loans to small family farmers that are unable to obtain credit elsewhere. And as part of the loan package or loans that we make emergency loans, and the flood disaster assistance is under the emergency loan program. Next slide, please. So again, we have emergency loan funds, and it may be used to do the things that you see on the slide here. It's important to note that we are unable to make loans to refinance real estate debt, and the item on the bottom there, the farmers in the primary or contiguous counties of the disaster area that are declared, they are eligible for these type of loans. Next slide. So we have loan limitations. The maximum loan amount for emergency loan is $500,000. We recently had an applicant up in Sutter County, and just based on the losses that were suffered due to the flooding, he obtained a loan of $500,000. So his losses were actually slightly above $500,000. But important to note that the maximum emergency loan that we have is $500,000. The interest rate on emergency loans is 3.75%. Next slide. Okay, credit elsewhere with the Farm Service Agency. As I when I started the presentation, noted that the Farm Service Agency makes loans to small family farmers that are unable to obtain credit elsewhere. In the handbooks with the emergency loans, there is some very specifics as it relates to the documentation needed for credit elsewhere. And so you can see on the bottom there that if the loan is greater than $300,000, 2 letters of declination are required. And I would add to that from lenders that typically make farm loans. Next slide. It's important to note that the applicant has 8 months from the date of a disaster designation to apply. And so that's, just to say it this way, it's a hard and fast deadline. We have had individuals that a week after the 8 months want to file an application, and it's this is a CFR a deadline that we abide by. So important to note that. And non-essential assets, another key item, a topic in the issue of EM loans. And so if there's an asset that actually produces positive income to the farming operation, that would not be considered a non-essential asset. But just this is a topic that we look at and when we evaluate EM loan applications and also our other farm ownership and operating loan applications. Next slide. Okay, so the general programs that we use in farm loans, our farm ownership loan program and our operating loan program, there's some very specific areas where we can loan on as relates to horses. But with emergency loans, those operations that breed, raise, and sell horses, they are eligible for emergency loans. And to that bottom bullet point, if the applicant, he or she is in his first year of farming, we can still help them with an emergency loan. Next slide. Okay, so types of losses, fiscal, and yeah, just with the information there on the issue of fiscal losses, typically we verify that through cost estimates. And tying in with a comment that Navdeep brought up, the idea, the concept is to bring this operation back to a pre-disaster level as relates to the type of fiscal losses. So the amount of costs are the idea is the day before the actual fiscal loss, what did the operation look like? And then with the emergency loan funds, then important to bring it to a pre-disaster level. Next slide. Okay, so chattel fiscal losses, just speaking from some time ago, I've worked for the Farm Service Agency now over 30 years. Back in '97 in the Stanislaus County area, we had a flood. The Don Pedro Dam overflowed and a huge wave of water came down. We made a loan to a squab producer in that area. He had lost a number of squabs that were located reasonably close to the Tuolumne River. So as relates to losses, we can replace farm animals as well. And this on this slide it says cows. So cows, beef cattle, hogs, any type of animals that were lost due to the disaster, loan funds can be used to replace those animals. Okay, next slide. All right. So what is a qualifying loss? It's a physical loss. It's not tied. So the physical losses are not tied to the issue of a 30% loss, and which is the case with production losses. There's a qualifying factor, so to speak. And so we're able to make fiscal loss loans and up to 100% of the cost to replace the loss that has occurred. We can also replace. So fiscal losses would include trees. So if trees have been lost due to the disaster, most likely most producers will make an effort to use the tree assistance program first. But if there's additional losses that aren't covered and they need to, again, bring their operation back to a pre-disaster level, the FSA can make loans to assist with replacing trees, replacing vineyards, and that type of thing. Next slide. So we also make loans for production losses, and one of the in Stanislaus County, we had many counties throughout the Central Valley. We have almonds. So for instance, if almonds suffer a freeze or there's too much rain during bloom, obviously then there's typically some production losses. And just by example, and with the 30% in mind, if we had an orchard that typically produced a ton of meats, 2,000 pounds the acre, and in the disaster year, either due to frost or due to excessive rain during the pollination, the production then for that year was 1,000 pounds the acre. That's a 50% loss, and that would meet the loss requirement under the production loss part of our emergency loans of 30%. Next slide. So this is another example on this slide of a qualifying loss under the production loss part of our emergency loan program. And you can see that if the farmer has multiple crops, perhaps one crop he or she has an above normal yield, but another crop in a different county, there's a 37% loss. And in that particular case, that particular farmer can qualify for emergency loan based on the losses on that 37% loss. Next slide. All right, so contact information. There's a tremendous amount of information on the website farmers.gov. And the Farm Service Agency in California has farm loan teams in 13 offices. Producers would go to one of those 13 offices to actually apply. We're just at this point also starting a process for online applications. So we hope to get that information out and put it on farmers.gov and that type of thing. So Sarah, with that the next slide is any questions, but that ends my presentation.
Great. Thank you, John. Really appreciate all that helpful information. This is a very clear instance talking about first, all those programs from FSA that are available without the declaration, and then turning to see the emergency loan program and how that declaration triggers that program and how valuable of a resource it is for producers that are impacted. Before we just turn on to our next presenter, I just want to take one quick minute. I know we've had some people join late. If you haven't already, please make sure to put any of your comments or questions directly into the chat. We'll be addressing those at the end of the presentations. And also, if you can take a moment to sign the digital registration form, the sign-in form, excuse me, then we'll make sure that everybody signs in and gets the copy of the presenters. So now that we've heard from a lot of our USDA colleagues, we're going to go ahead and turn over to our partners at UCANR, and I am very pleased to introduce to you Glenda Humiston, Vice President at UCANR. Glenda, it's all you.
Great, thank you, Sarah. I greatly appreciate it. You can advance the next slide. So I just want to say I've been asked to talk about, in particular, the new regional food business support hubs that are being stood up across the nation. But I do want to mention that for those of you who may not be familiar with us, we have a wide array of programs around the state that are increasingly useful for community and economic development. In fact, if you look at the second bullet point on our mission statement, to help California enjoy economic success in a global economy, we probably need to be working in more industries, and that is something we're trying to do. Next, please. So this is just a real quick overview of who we are and who you might be able to access. Next slide. There we go. No, you skipped one. If you could back up one. There we go. So this is just a very quick overview of where we are in California. We serve every county. We have a research and extension going on, academics in the field, and they're there to work with you in identifying issues, doing the research analysis to make sure that solutions can be found, and also via extension to implement those. We have research extension centers, and we have local communities working with them. 13 statewide programs that cover a wide array of topics, and over 20,000 volunteers, which we're increasingly using in new and innovative ways. For example, our master gardeners are now taking a strong lead in advising homeowners on fire-resistant landscaping to help protect their homes from the potential of fire. We also have them working on early pest detection. Our advisors in the county offices are there to help homeowners and communities after fire and flood and other disasters with access to information and resources, helping folks understand where they can get information. And for those who have pets and livestock, which often are evacuated to our county fairgrounds, our 4-H kids and our cooperative extension folks often help take care of such animals and make arrangements for that. Next, please. So this is the main grant I'm going to talk about today, because it is the one. Next slide, please. Am I supposed to be forwarding these slides, because I don't have that capability?
No, I'm not sure if we're having a delay or not on your end, but we were looking at the $35 million grant received from AMS.
Oh, there we go. So it's just now showing up on my screen.
I think it's just a slight delay in the thing. John, maybe if you want to not have your video, and Glenda, if you're having too much of a lag, you could also shut your video off while, whatever helps.
I'll do that. Sounds good. So there we go. So this is the grant that was recently awarded from USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service. We are just now finishing up the final contract details and work plan. We will be up and running to start delivering on this within the next couple months. It's $35 million we received for this region, and I'll show you the region in just a second. That is really around standing up more resilient and productive food systems. I think a lot of us remember a few years ago when COVID first hit, we really quickly discovered that first few months that our food systems, our supply chains, weren't as flexible or nimble as we really wanted them to be, as well as there's just huge economic development opportunity in the food space that we're trying to help. Next slide. So this is the region that this particular grant is serving. 4 states, California, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. We're delivering this via a hub and spoke system that includes partners from all 4 states and is very much academia, government, and private sector partnership. In fact, we have a leadership triad of those 3 in each of the states, and then one that oversees the 4 states regionally. Next slide. And we do have partners from all of these that are delivering a full suite of service and programs. You can see here all the different aspects of what will be part of this Food Business Support Center, from business planning, financial, legal, succession, safety, record keeping, all of the above, and more. Next, to help deliver that, we will have two types of grants: our seed grants, which are non-competitive to advanced business plans, and more details will be on the website for this once we have that stood up. Like I said, we're still finalizing the final contract and work plan with USDA in order to then release these grants to the public. But then we'll also be having competitive development grants to help existing businesses expand. Next. Part of the goal in this program is to just really leverage existing human financial institutional researchers and make sure that this project outlives this particular grant. We will be spending a fair amount of time as we are delivering this grant in ensuring that these partnerships and collaborations and institutions start developing resources to have a sustainable long-term effect. Next. So this is the key partners that are delivering the grant. You'll notice that for each of our 4 states is our State Department of Food and Ag, who also are receiving some additional funds I'll mention in a moment to actually complement this grant. We've got universities, systems from each state, and private sector. And in addition to these key partners who are very much part of the administration, the policy setting, and overall coordination of this, next, we have over 30 collaborators. And these are, again, from all 4 states. They'll be doing a variety of individual products and projects and deliverables as we deliver on this grant. Next, I'm going to give a few examples of what some of that looks like. So, for example, out of Arizona, utilizing a federally designated rural development council. And I should say, one of the premises behind this grant in particular, when we proposed it, is that we looked around to identify where there were successful programs already delivering. And one of the ideas is to enhance and expand those programs to the other states, to other regions, and replicate them, basically. We were looking to not, duplicate something already out there, and also not reinvent the wheel. Next, please. Another great example of one of these type of programs is technical assistance, which is critically important when you're trying to support these food business operations, as well as supply chains and hubs in between. This is just an example of some of the folks that will be providing technical assistance. There's many more of them out of that collaborator list, but they'll be working on the ground with people, with education, with workshops, with new materials, and actually trying to work, as we work with those folks in the field, identify needs for new materials to be developed and shared. Next, please. This is a particularly exciting program that a great deal of interest is in, not just in California, but elsewhere. In fact, it has grown into a national and even international program, is this Center for Good Food Purchasing. This evolved out of work that the Los Angeles Food Policy Council started doing roughly 20 some years ago, as they were really trying to facilitate large regional focus on local food, sustainable food, getting it into Los Angeles, particularly public institutions. And this program evolved out of it and has just some amazing resources, lessons learned, examples of how other people can replicate and utilize this type of program to create new markets for local producers and local food vendors. Next, please. Another great example that we're doing here in California and looking to produce elsewhere is utilizing our fairgrounds as business incubators. And this is critically important because, as many of you may know, our fairgrounds in the state are critically important infrastructure during emergencies. They are typically staging grounds during fires and flood and other emergencies for our emergency first responders, as well as I mentioned earlier, a place to house livestock and pets that have to be evacuated. But in Humboldt, they went a step further and started making use of some of their buildings and facilities to incubate new emerging businesses. And at this point, they've actually incubated over 15 new businesses, a few of which have gotten so large they needed to leave the fairgrounds to find larger facilities elsewhere. This is a source of revenue for the fairgrounds and a way for them to deal with keeping their facilities and buildings up to date and deal with deferred maintenance that unfortunately too many fairgrounds struggle with. Next, please. We're also going to be showcasing and supporting regional food economy strategies. This example from the Sacramento 6-county region is a really great example of where communities have come together going on for at least 15 years to do the kind of feasibility studies and start developing the infrastructure and the supply chains and the contractual arrangements to get local food into the retail outlets, not just grocery, but the restaurants, the public institutions, and particularly the school districts. The Sacramento Unified School District has got is a leader of doing this kind of sourcing local food. So we'll be sharing, lessons learned from these past strategies with other regions, and other regions also have strategies that'll be sharing best practices with each other. Next, please. This is getting back to the state departments of ag. They're going to really be playing a strong role with working with us on how to improve policy and infrastructure around procurement, food hubs, local food businesses, etc. For example, one of the things we're going to be taking advantage of in California is recent laws on expanding the home cottage food law, which allows micro entrepreneurs to create home-based businesses that can then grow and expand into larger businesses producing food products. In particular, in addition to this around policy work, if you go to the next slide, USDA Ag Marketing Service has provided each state department of ag nationally additional funding, separate funding from our grant in this Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program. California received $38 million. I'm not exactly sure what the other states received. Each state's a little different based upon criteria. But what this funding is to do is to complement our food business support efforts, our technical assistance and policy and planning and that. This is really focused on infrastructure, facilities, equipment. So it's a really beautiful way to complement our efforts and really make sure that we are expanding these regional and local food systems. Next, please. Part of this work is really built upon efforts that have been going on for quite some time. This is an effort that EDA has funded and supported for several years now here in California, our Central Valley Ag Plus Food and Beverage Manufacturing Consortium, where we've really tried to create that economic ecosystem, bringing together workforce, markets, infrastructure, supply chains, access to capital, research and innovation from our university systems, bring those together at the table talking to each other. And as we're doing this, we're really seeing the advantages to community and economic development initiatives and being able to be successful much further and faster than they might have been otherwise. Next, please. As we're also working along this food value chain, which you see here, this farm food value chain, we're seeking where there's opportunities to interact with other industry clusters and see how we can really leverage. I mean, an obvious one for the food systems is agrotourism and all the retail and marketing opportunities. But there's also the goods movement when we start thinking about supply chain. How can we improve goods movement, and not just in ways that make it more cost effective, but that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and get efficiencies in use of water and just improvements overall in the system. Same with technology, renewable energy, manufacturing. How can we find ways to leverage resources, gain economies of scale, find new research that improves processes, etc. To help with that, next please, we've coordinated a statewide system around tying together agriculture, food, health, and climate. This is a coalition of the willing, so to speak, that we've built the last several years, where we've went out region by region in the state, identified who's working on these issues, and brought them together. Now, you'll notice this is largely a focus on innovation, research, and development. But we now are going into that second phase where these type of folks are tying together with regional economic development activities. So a lot of the folks you see here, and frankly, this is missing a few logos. I need to update it probably because we have new partners coming on all the time. So this is a great way to make sure that your regional economic development effort has access to some well-established collaborative organizations trying to focus on that research and development. Next, please. To also make that transfer from research and innovation into actual implementation, workforce, economic development activities, we recently created a whole new tranche of cooperative extension advisors that we have put around the state. We've got about 2/3 of these already hired. We're finishing up hiring the last third right now. And each of these folks is paired up with a regional economic development organization, members of the California Stewardship Network. You can see that what we've done here is we've tried to create advisors in an array of subject matter to help us move forward. So you'll see regional food systems and bio-based products, advanced wood products, ag technology, broadband development utilization, urban resiliency efforts around water capacity, hydrogen, agritourism, small business. And by establishing this as a cohort, our goal is that these people will be working very closely with economic development entities, but also be that liaison back into the university system and the innovation system to facilitate analyses and information and research that might be needed, and also ensure that delivery is happening of economic development activities. They'll be sharing info with each other, best practices, and can be a source of connection to these type of topics, even though it may not be their individual industry sector they work with. They can connect people to folks elsewhere in the state and throughout the UC and CSU and community college system. We're very much partnering across the three systems on delivering this. So next slide, this is my last slide. Really excited to be taking on this Regional Food Business Support Center. It's a new way to bring together a whole lot of other work we have been doing and really focus in on regional food systems. But a lot of what I've shown you here is also very much similar to what we're trying to do around bio-based products, agro-tourism, regional industry clusters of all sorts. There's more information you can find at our websites, and I'll be happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda. It's always refreshing and invigorating to hear the breadth of everything going on over there, and to trying to keep up with it is probably nearly impossible. So thank you so much for this great presentation. That concludes our presentations for today, but we do have time left to take questions. So please feel free to enter that information in the chat. And Alicia, I see that you have mentioned or put in a question here about, are these free resources? I think that was during Glenda's presentation that came in. So Glenda, in response to some of the funding and resources and things that are out there, no costs involved with accessing these?
No. In fact, wherever you are in at least California, other states do it differently, but in California, if you go into Google or whatever search engine you use and you put UCCE, University of California Cooperative Extension, and then the name of your county, the local county website will pop up, and on each of those county websites is full contact information for everybody there and what issues they're working on. And if your county doesn't have a specific person in the county located on the issue you need, you can go to our overall website and search by program as well as discipline. So let's say maybe your county doesn't have a person working on nut trees and you need that, some other county might. Similarly, we couldn't put one of those community and economic development people in every single county, but they're serving all the counties via the network.
Great. So while we're having you off mic or on the mic, just a quick question for you here. And for this audience in general, how do you think that, how would you encourage them to engage with your programs? What would you say for our economic developers that have joined us today that are out across the state? What would be their next best step for engaging with you? Do you think through the UCCE or beyond that?
Yeah, so there's several ways they can do that. Again, they can go directly to their county and see what resources are there, even ask people there for referrals elsewhere. They can go to our main website. We are standing up an external advisory council to advise us in this expanded effort around community and economic development. And a lot of the organizations they're familiar with, like CalEd, and Cameo and rural development and et cetera are part of that advisory council. So they can access people that via those representatives. I'm also hoping a lot of people are participate in the California State Economics Summit, which happens each year in the fall. I will be bringing those new cooperative extension advisors to the summit this fall, which is going to be down in Indian Wells. I think early in October, but I might have the dates wrong. I'll go look that up and put it in chat in just a moment. But we're going to have all those advisors, those new advisors in community and economic development down at the State Economic Summit. I'm scheduling a work group meeting for them, piggybacked on the summit, just so that I can justify the budget to bring them there. So that would be a great opportunity for people to meet these folks and network them and have conversations.
Great, thank you. And a question kind of maybe for the broader presenter group, as we've been talking about the recovery, from these flood events, but looking forward to the next event, whatever that might be, what would you recommend for the economic development community to do in preparation to help their producers? Is there anything that they can do? And for our, the producers in general, how do we prepare for the next event? Because it's not an if, it's a when.
Well, my answer is easy. Get crop insurance. Encourage your growers to go out and seek out an agent. We have agent locators on our website. Just get the crop insurance. It's just like any other insurance. You need it before the disaster hit. RMA crop insurance or federal crop insurance is it's very affordable. I mentioned that, but what I did mention is the way we design premium rates. It's done to break even prior to consideration of the subsidy. So if the subsidy wasn't paid, if there was no subsidy, we still do a premium rate that breaks even. So if you add the subsidy onto it, in theory, based on averages, theoretically, I guess, growers would come out ahead by getting crop insurance. So it's set up to be more than a break even because of the considerations of subsidy. It's made to be more than break even. So you should receive more indemnity than the premium you pay. But get crop insurance. If you don't have a crop that's insurable, look at the whole farm or the micro farm programs. They're available. They do cover all the income on a farm. We are working with some industries, some crop industries out there to develop new programs. So hopefully your crops will be covered in the future if they're not covered now.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, thinking about these things ahead of the disaster, because we all know in that disaster moment, in that event, I mean, people are not thinking clearly, they're in crisis mode. And I know that we've talked in other events about establishing those relationships in advance of the disaster and being prepared. So to my colleagues at FSA, just quickly, do you have any recommendations or tools in are there steps that producers should take or need to take in advance of a disaster? Does it hurt? Does it help if they have that established relationship? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I guess I'll take that question. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, it's if a producer, I recommend that the producer get on our mailing list. So, contact your local FSA office and get on our mailing list. You can always go to farmers.gov, and at the bottom of that farmers.gov website, there is a place to where you can put in your email address to get our communications. Another item that the producers may want to do is to get their farm record established with us. So once you are in our system where we have your farm record established, we have your ownership on record, we have, we've already figured out how many acres you have and what type of land you have, we can, it expedites the application process, right? So where you can, instead of having you come into the office, we can actually work with you via email or via box or some other form of communication to get the application processed and received from you and as well as processed. So any time where you can have a relationship with the county office, it just expedites the overall process of the application.
Excellent. And John, one quick question for you. I noted the deadline that you indicated on those emergency loans, that hard stop at 8 months. So looking back to our two most recent declared disasters that we have, 4683 was declared January 14th. So it looks like we are rapidly approaching that timeline for any producers impacted there. And then 4699 had an April 3rd declaration date. So a little bit more room, but again, it looks like we still have some time for those producers to apply. Is there any, is it as short as the day before, or is there some leeway in, like, do they need to give themselves a few weeks in order to get in contact with FSA? Do you have any recommendations on anything with that, since that is such a hard and fast deadline for the producers? John, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Okay. Well, I'm not hearing it. Oh, Nob, did you want to take that?
Yeah. So can you repeat your question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know, John made mention that 8 months is a very hard deadline for the emergency loans. And looking back at the declaration dates from our two events, we're approaching those timelines. The first one was a January 14th declaration date, so we're getting very close to that deadline. And then the other was an April 3rd, so we have just a little more time on that. And I'm
Right.
just checking in, do producers, can they come in literally that day before to request, or is it a better practice maybe giving themselves at least a few weeks or some time to engage that relationship with FSA? Just curious on kind of that timeline.
Yeah, so I think it's always important to come in as soon as you have a loss, and that doesn't matter whether it's emergency loan or any other of our disaster programs. And so, always recommend that the producer, as soon as they know that they have a loss, don't wait until the last day. The chances are there are other producers who are also waiting until the last day, and you may run into other issues, and it's always better to get that process going. And sometimes the loan process does take a little bit of time while the agency is working hard to streamline a lot of those processes. Because it's a loan, it does require lots of paperwork. So the sooner you get started, the better. The sooner you'll be, you'll have an answer whether you're approved or not, and the sooner you can start your recovery process in from the disaster.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions in the chat. I will pause for just a moment and see if there's anything else that anybody would like to put forward, or any other final comments from any of our presenters today. I think this has been a really great opportunity I'm familiar and exposed to a lot of the resources that USDA and our partners offer, and yet every single time it comes forward, I feel like I'm learning something new. So for those that don't have that constant exposure to USDA, from my perspective, would really encourage you, all the economic developers that are out there across the state, please get to know your local USDA staff. One of the best things about the agency, from my humble perspective, is how decentralized we are. And we are an agency that lives and breathes amongst the people. We're not sitting back in Washington, D.C., making policy and decisions that then impact everybody. Our staff and employees live in the communities, they're involved in the communities, and these are the people that you probably already know and interacting with. So if you don't already know your local USDA staff, please go out there, get to know them. If you need help making those introductions, we are happy to share resources and help draw those connections. But again, I think a best practice really is getting to know those teams in advance of those disasters. And like we said, it's not a matter of if, but when those next events come.
That's right.
So with that, we will conclude, and I want to thank, first of all of our presenters today for coming and sparing their time with all of us and sharing their resources, and for all of you who took the time out of your busy schedules to join us. These webinars are all going to be recorded, and we will make sure to share the material that was mentioned, the presentations, the slides as well. So with that, you get a little extra time back in your day. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day. You're all free to drop.
Thank you, Sarah. Bye-bye.